Konnichiwa. My name is Zack Arias, and I am from Atlanta, Georgia, in the south of the United States, where we're into a lot of hip-hop. Anyone into hip-hop here? Hip-hop? Anyone? Anyone? I'll wait for the translation. No? Still no hip-hop. No hip-hop. I have more work to do here. Okay, so I have always wanted to be the kind of photographer that always has a camera. All right, I've always respected photographers who, they don't leave their house without a camera. Now, I'm a professional photographer. It's how I feed my 4 children. I have 4 boys from 4 years old to 14 years old in my house. And I feed them with the work that I do with a camera. So there's never been a camera that I take home with me. There's a saying that the plumber has leaky pipes and the photographer's children have no pictures, right? So I had DSLRs. I was a Nikon shooter for a long time, Nikon. Then I was a Canon photographer. I switched to Canon when the 5D Mark II came out. So I had Canon gear and L lenses and all of that. I also shoot medium format, phase 1 system. And I was always looking for that camera that I could always take with me so that I could get little parts and slices of my life. And I tried several point and shoot, several compact cameras, and I was never happy with the image quality. They were cool cameras, you know, the Canon G series, they were cool cameras. They kind of had a retro feel. They had a little viewfinder. They had some dials that looked like an old camera. And you'd take a picture, and on the back of the screen, it looked really nice. And I'd go, wow, that's a really nice looking picture. But then I would pull it up in Photoshop, and it'd be like, not so much. So what I ended up doing, like so many people, is I just took a lot of pictures on my iPhone, because this was the camera that I always had with me. And do you know where iPhone pictures look the best? On your iPhone. You know, when you pull these up and look at them larger, they start to fall apart as far as image quality. And for me, as a professional photographer, image quality is absolutely key. It has to be amazing image quality. And I'm kind of spoiled with the professional cameras that I've owned, because I have that expectation of image quality. I want a small camera, but I want this quality from my large cameras. And I just never found it. Never found it, never found it, until I was teaching a workshop in San Francisco about 2.5 or 3 years ago. And a student at the workshop had a Fuji X100. And I'd seen some pictures of it, and I'd heard a little bit of talk about this cool looking new camera that's kind of hitting the market. And this was the first one I'd seen. And I'm like, hey, that's that Fuji, isn't it? That new X100? And he's like, yeah, you want to try it? So he handed it to me, and he let me use it for the day. And the very next morning, I bought one. And now I have a camera that I take with me everywhere. This is our youngest son, Hawk. His name is Hawk Danger. Danger is his middle name. And he's trying to be cute and get extra toppings for his ice cream. I would have never taken that picture of Hawk. Maybe I would have gotten an iPhone photo of it, but then you know where that picture would live? On my phone, maybe at Instagram. But I'd never make a print of it. It would never print very well. But now with the X100, I have a camera literally with me all the time. I keep it on a black rapid sling, and I'm like Clint Eastwood in the Westerns. So when I say I have it with me all the time, I have it with me all the time. It's on my bedside table. My wife calls it my mistress. She says that I love it more than her. And I said, no, dear, of course not. Can you hand me my camera, please? Now, I have always loved the genre of street photography. I am a portrait photographer. That is my bread and butter, my meat and potatoes, my rice and fish of work that I do. And I've always loved street photography, but I never ever shot street photography, ever. Because I was always too intimidated walking around with a big DSLR, click, 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 click. And I didn't want to shoot street photography with a phone because the image quality would be horrible. And there was no compact camera that I liked. And as much as I'm a sentimental old fool for film, when it comes down to it, I just rather shoot digital. So when I bought this X100, the original X100, about 2 weeks later, I was on a trip in New York. And I only took my X100. I said, I'm a big believer that you have to learn your camera equipment. So you get a new piece of equipment, put all your other equipment away, and go shoot with that new piece of equipment, learn it, see what it can do. And to be very honest with you, at the beginning, I hated the X100. I fought it. I cursed at it. I would be saying really bad words to my camera. But I loved it because I had to fight with it. It made me learn the camera. And a lot of people on the blogs and on the internet were complaining about the camera, and I was one of the early adopters who put my hand up and said, yeah, but oh my gosh, is it amazing when you get it right. It's absolutely amazing once you learn how to use this camera. And then the thing I love most about Fuji, the thing that you guys do so well and so much better than Canon and Nikon and all the rest of them, is you listen to us. You listen to the photographers. And then the things that we're talking about show up in firmware updates. And what is so surprising to me is how Fuji has made an amazing camera and then we'll release firmware and make it more amazing. And they are constantly working on it and working on it and working on it. And they're constantly listening to working photographers and amateur photographers. Anyone who loves their cameras, Fuji listens to them and starts to implement those requests into their firmware and into their cameras. And I have never seen a camera company be so in tune with its user base like I've seen with Fuji. I mean, they do that remarkably well. So, I'm in New York. I say, you know what, I'm going to shoot some stuff on the street and, maybe get clobbered in the head. All right? Poor Hello Kitty was having a bad night. She didn't have the proper permit. And I would have never, ever, ever shot that picture. I would have never shot that picture because I would not walk for 10 or 12 hours on the streets of New York with a DSLR. And there was no compact camera that made me happy until the Fuji. So very much like David-san said, that he got the camera, he had his working cameras, but he had this little camera on the side. That was very much my story as well with the Fuji. I started shooting more and more and more with it. This is outside of Coney Island in New York, and it's the end of the day, and Mom is wanting to go home. But the son is looking back at the boardwalk, wanting to go back and play and go back to the beach. And I just hang out on sidewalks, and I find interesting backgrounds, and I wait for humanity to walk in front of my lens. One of my favorite pictures I've ever shot, and I cannot tell you why. I don't know why I love this picture so much. I think it's because I make up stories about who these three people are. Every time I look at this picture, I try to make up a new story. And it's usually around some sort of large heist like they're planning something, or they're, you know, one of them is the smart guy. Here's the smart guy on the right, he's doing the computer programming, and you've got the pretty blonde in the middle who's going to create the distraction, but you've got the real brains of the whole operation who's on the left, and she's going to be the one walking into the museum to steal the Van Gogh, but I don't know, you know. And I would have never shot that picture. I have so many pictures that I love, and pictures of those people I do love, I would have never taken had I not had a Fuji X100. So, I'm on the streets of New York, and I'm very much a believer in, you need to have a theme. You should work at, instead of just shooting at anything, you should maybe come up with a theme, come up with a story, and just work on one thing for a little while. So I walked out of a store, and I saw this girl on her phone, and it's a black background, white dress, nice contrast. She's on her phone, and I take a picture. And then I turn around, and I go down the block, and there's people on their phone. Oh, I take a picture. And I had a kind of a Hollywood movie moment where the camera pulls back, where I start looking around me in New York, and everyone's on their phone. Everyone's on the phone. Everyone's on the phone. So I say, for the next 10 blocks, I'm going to only take pictures of people on their phone. So 10 blocks that direction, go. And click, 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 click. Wow, they're everywhere. And then the next 10 blocks. And then it was 10 days. And now I've been working on this series for about 2.5 years. That wherever I travel, I want to get an interesting shot of people as they're engrossed in their devices. Sometimes I find an interesting photo and I just wait a few moments and someone will walk by. This guy walked from the 7th floor of this building down to the ground floor the whole time on his phone. And he's just going down the steps on his phone, and I saw him go by. And I rushed to the ledge. I was like, oh, please stay on your phone. 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 And I was focused and I was ready, and click. And what's great about this camera is it's so inconspicuous and it's so quiet. My personal, I try to see how close can I get to somebody, and they don't know I'm taking a picture of them. It's like, it's a sport to me. And I'll want to get right up to someone and take their picture and just slide away. And with this being so quiet, they never know I was there. This is one of my favorites. How many of that is us, huh? I love his big smile, and you can tell I think she was over it 30 years ago. Oh, and this is an interesting thing. Like David-san said, I always, the thing I fell in love first was the optical viewfinder of this camera. That is what I fell in love with first. And I've always thought it was kind of amateur to use the back of the screen. But I'll give you a little hint on how to shoot this kind of stuff. All right, so I was walking to a meeting. Let me get this. So I was walking to a meeting in Chicago, and I'm busy going to my meeting, and I see this couple sitting there on the bench, and he's all in his device, and she's just like this, bored. And I was like, I walked past them. Okay, I gotta get this shot. I have to get this shot. So they're sitting about right there, all right? And I'm gonna shoot them from about this distance. So what I do is I turn on the back of my camera, I turn on the screen on the back of the camera, and I'll look. Let's say you're the gentleman here and your wife's there. I'll look above their head, and I'll just stop this distance, and I'll pull the camera up to my eye, and I make a big push, like quick, kind of like, I'm taking a picture. And then what do we do when we take a picture? We look at it, right? So with my screen turned on, I'll stop right here, I'll take a picture, and then I pull it down as though I'm now looking at the picture I just took. And I'm focused. And I take the picture. And then I look back up, and then I'll see them look at me through, oh, they saw me. And then I'll recompose. And then I go, and I go walking down my way. And it works every time. I can get within, half a meter of somebody sometimes. So I started shooting this, and I started seeing it, and now I'm trying to build new layers into it. But what's interesting is that CNN picked it up. The first time CNN ever picked up one of my stories of anything. And it's a street photography genre, which I never shot. I've always loved street photography, but I never shot it because of the equipment intimidated me. And I cannot tell you, and I swear to you, I'm not paid a dime, a yen, to say this, but this is changing my life as a photographer, this camera. And my Canon equipment just kept staying in the bag and kept staying in the bag. And I would go out on jobs and I wouldn't take my Canon. I would take my X100 on paying jobs. I trust it with my career. So the X Pro 1 came out. Now I did a big blog post about the Fuji X100, and I talked about how it was the camera that made me cuss, but I'm just checking the timer. It was the camera that made me cuss, but it was seriously probably the greatest digital camera ever made. I made a big blog post about it, and I somehow got on Fuji's radar, and Sosan is here. So where are you, Sosan, who works with Fuji Middle East, he contacted me through some people that we know in Dubai, and he said, Zack-san, we have a new camera coming out. Would you like to use it? Oh, yes, I would. Would you like to go to India with it? Okay. Yes. So I go to Dubai, I meet up with Sosan, I get a Fuji X Pro 1 just before it came out. And I started shooting with it in Dubai, and it blew me away. Because the one thing with the X100 is one lens, and it's fixed, and I love that. I do not want an X100 with a zoom. I want one beautiful, perfect lens. Not a lens that zooms but isn't that great. I want the perfect lens, and they've made that for the X100. So I started shooting more and more with the X Pro 1. It took some time getting used to, but I absolutely fell in love with the 35mm 1.4 lens for that camera. The 35mm 1.4 right now is my favorite lens that I own, of any lens that I own. It works in the studio as well. I do a lot of work in studio. I have a studio in Atlanta, so it's important that my cameras work with my flashes and strobes, and they work in the studio. They work on location. It's the detail and the resolution that these chips have is amazing. And so I can go from, pretty girl in a studio environment to a pretty lady in the streets of India with the same camera system. It's small, it's compact, it's quiet, the image quality is absolutely stunning. This is some of the work that we shot when we went to India with the X Pro 1. I climbed up on this ladder that I wasn't sure if I should get on there. And, Indians kind of have this head bobble that I can't tell if it's yes or no. And so I would say, could I climb up that? And someone would go, is that yes? Or is that no? Is it yes or no? I'm going to take that as maybe. And so I climbed up on this ladder, which I wasn't sure if I should be up that or not, and was hanging on a ladder and shooting this scene in front of me. Slow shutter speed, no tripod. Slow shutter speed, no tripod, just like David Simon said. I could get right up behind these kids, take the picture, and sneak out of there, and they just never knew I was there. I'm like a ninja. India changed my life. India broke my heart and changed my life, and I am going back to India to do something. I don't know what I'm going to do in India, but I feel like I have to do something in India for the kids. So I'm taking my kids to India. And you know, if you want a beautiful South African model in India too, you can do that as well. And this is the picture right here. It's a little washed out on the screen. I was shooting with the X-Pro 1. I just had it for a week or so. I'm in India. And it was, this picture is a very special moment of my life. Because I click this picture and I'm looking at it and my brain just goes, Zach, you're in India. You're shooting a beautiful model in a taxi cab you just hailed from the street for a camera company. And it just, this is my life? It can't be. Because 10 years ago I was at Kinko's. You have Kinko's? I think I've seen Kinko's here in Japan. I used to work at Kinko's. And now I'm in India because Sosan sent me to India with the X-Pro 1. And when I took that picture and it handled that light and that color so beautifully, I'm like David, I shoot JPEG. I very rarely shoot RAW files because I'm so happy with the JPEGs. So a lot of people, I blog about these cameras, and a lot of people that read my blog are wedding photographers. And luckily we have a wedding photographer coming up to talk to us soon. So I probably shouldn't even show these because you're about to like show me up for real. But a lot of people are like, well, could you use it at a wedding? I'm like, yeah, it's a camera. Yeah, you could use it no, but could you use it in a wedding? Oh, yes, but no, really. Okay. So I went and I shot a wedding with Fuji cameras. And just to go, yes, you can shoot events, you can shoot weddings, you can shoot paid jobs, you can use flash. And then, my interesting life, I came back from India, and in 48 hours I was on a job for Land Rover. And so, can you shoot commercial campaigns with this? So I have the X-Pro 1, and I started shooting for Land Rover. And Land Rover is turned into be a very good client of mine. And I'm using my Fuji X cameras on commercial jobs, advertising jobs, magazine jobs. I trust my career with these cameras. It's a phenomenal camera system. And the thing that has to work for me is print, because I still shoot for print. And I kind of believe the old David Burnett philosophy of it's not a photograph until it's a print. And so it has to hold up in print. And the Fujis stand side by side and it's usually exceeding the quality of all the DSLRs I've ever shot. And so this year I just said, that's it, I'm done with DSLRs. You know, we have to fight the Canon, Nikon, Canon, Nikon, Sony, this, that. I just walked away from it. Sold pretty much all of my Canon equipment, and I just shoot for the vast majority of my work with Fuji cameras. So that is me, and that is what I do. I went to Cuba as well, and I cannot say enough great things about this camera. So thank you very much for having me.